If this can happen to me, I promise you, it can happen to anyone.
It is the world's greatest spy device.
There is an industry that is built on keeping this invisible. They can see everything about you, they can see everything about what your device is doing, and they can do whatever they want with your device. Wherever you go, your phone goes.
While you are watching your phone is watching you. It should be waking people up. We are allowing these devices to basically become our masters.
The phone is really an extension of the self. It's a part of you.
We buy them so they can spy on us.
Once your phone is hacked, what is in their hands is not simply your device, it is your future. They're selling our future, they're selling our past, they are selling our history, our identity, and ultimately, they are stealing our power. The screen may be off as it's sitting on your desk, but the device is talking all of the time. The question we have to ask is, who is it talking to? If I get a smartphone and I need to use a phone, I actually open it up before I use it.
Over half of all smartphones are infected. Every pornography site in the world. How do you think they make their money? The instant you visit the site, the very first video that you watch downloads.
I want you to think about the power of your phone. Think about all the different sensors that are on it. It has radios for cellular communication. It's got receivers for satellite communication, like GPS signals. It knows the location where you are at any given time, even if you turn location services off, as long as you're connected to the phone network.
It is the only phone that cannot be remotely rooted or remotely jailbroken.
Facebook or Google, for whatever reason, got out of bed in the morning and they actually wanted to protect your the security of your communications in a way that even they can't break. Like right now, Google and Facebook, they do a great job keeping other people from spying on your communications. But if Google wants to rifle through your inbox, right? If Facebook wants to go through all your direct messages and give that to the federal government, like you tap one button and boom, they've got all of it. It happens every single day. And this is actually a bigger thing in the COVID crisis. There's this idea called end-to-end encryption, which what it means is that when you send a message, when Billy sends a message to Bobby, Billy and Bobby both have the keys to unlock that message. And it could be sent through Facebook, it could be sent through Google, but without that key, Google, Facebook, they don't have that key. Only the phones at the end, the laptops at the end, the people who own those, they're the only people who have the key. So if somebody comes to Facebook and says, we want to see that information, Facebook hands over the encrypted message, right? And Facebook goes, well, here you go, here's our copy, but we can't read it. You can't either. Now you've got to actually do some work on the government side and go get that key yourself. And then you can read it, right? But we can't read it. So let me go into some of that in a little depth. The number one target is the iPhone. If you have an iPhone, you get these little software update notifications all the time that are like, hey, please update to the most recent version of iOS. And that's a fabulous thing. That's a wonderful thing for security. Because the number one way that people's devices get screwed, if it's not just through user error, right, like you entering your password somewhere you shouldn't, it's like a fake site that looks like Gmail, but it's not actually Gmail, and you just gave the guy your password, now he uses your password to log in. But to actually break into a device is that it's not patched, right? Patch means getting these security updates, these little code updates, that fix holes that researchers found in the security device. Well, Apple's really good about rolling these out all the time for everybody in the world. The problem is, basically all these different iPhones, right? You got an iPhone 6, you got an iPhone 8, you got an iPhone X, you got an iPhone, 3, whatever. These are all running a pretty narrow band of software versions. And so these guys go, if they want to target, for example, Android phones, like Google phones, like a Samsung Galaxy or something like that. There's like 1 billion different phones made by 1 billion different people. Half of them are completely out of date. But what it means is it's not one version of software they're running, it's like 10,000. And this is actually bad for security on the individual level. But it's good for security in a very unusual way, which is the guys who are developing the exploits. The guys like this NSO group who are trying to find ways to break into phones. they realize if they find a way to attack an iPhone, which is actually, this is difficult, this is really difficult stuff, now it works against basically every iPhone. And who has iPhones? All the rich people, right? All the important people, all the lawmakers, all the guys who are in there. So they've made a business on basically attacking the iPhone and selling it to every 2-bit thug who runs a police department in the world. They sell this stuff to Saudi Arabia, they sell this to Mexico. And there's a group of researchers in Canada working at a university called the Citizen Lab. And these guys are really like the best in the world at tracking what NSO Group is doing. If you want to learn about this stuff, the real stuff, look up Citizen Lab and the NSO Group. And what they have found is all the people who are being targeted by the NSO Group, the classes of people, the countries that are using this. And these like petrostates, these bad actors nationally, will pay literally tens of millions of dollars each year just to have the ability to break into an iPhone for a certain number of times, because that's how these guys do it. They sell their business plan. They go, we'll let you break into any iPhone just by basically sending a text message to this phone. All you need to find is the phone number of a person who's running an iPhone, and we will exploit something. Like the easiest forms of exploit, or rather the easier types of exploits, are where they send you a text message, right? And it'll be like an iMessage or something like that. And it's got a link in it that'll be like, oh gosh, terrible news, your buddy's father just died, and we're making funeral arrangements. Are you gonna be there? It's the day after tomorrow. And when you click the link for the funeral arrangements, it opens your web browser. And the web browser on your phone is always the biggest, most complicated process in it, right? There's a zillion lines of code in this, as opposed to an instant messenger where there's fewer lines of code in it. And this is the problem, is on the phone. You can replace the phone, right? And they'll lose access to that. But if they've already used that to gain the passwords that you use to access, your iCloud or whatever, when they have control of the phone, they've already got your photo roll, right? They've already got your contact list. They already have everything that you've ever put in that phone. They already have all your notes. They already have all your files. They already have everything that's in your message history, right? They can pull that out immediately. And now, because they have, all your contacts and things like that, they see that phone stop being active. They know you've changed your phone number. All they have to do is find the new phone number, and then they can try to go after you again. The benefit is, with that old style of attack, if you get that message and you don't click that link, you're somebody in a vulnerable class, right? You've had these kind of attacks against you before. It looks suspicious. You don't know who this person is. The number isn't right, something like that. And you save that link. You don't click the link. You don't do anything with that link, but you send it to a group like Citizen Lab. They can basically use that link to basically use like a dummy phone, like a sort of a Trojan horse, to go to the site that would attack your phone and catch it. And this is what the sort of process that all of their research is based on.
The hacking happens all the time. The thing that concerns me is not so much the fact that the information was available. All of this information you can buy from Google. What concerns me is how did they get this information? My phone number, my address, my age, my marital status, my preferences. Once you get the information into a database, it will be hacked, and something we should be concerned about. But far more concerning to me is, how did it happen? It happened because companies like Google and Facebook acquired data on every one of us, what blogs we're visiting, even our messages that we pass on Facebook, our instant messages on Twitter, are accessible. And these things are collected so that we have no privacy. Every router that's in use, accessible to hackers, to the CIA, that they can take over the control of the router. They can monitor all of the traffic, and worse, they can download malware into any device that is connected to that router. So I personally never connect to any Wi-Fi system. Every router in America has been compromised. We have all known this, and we've been warning about it for years. Nobody pays attention until something like WikiLeaks comes up and says, look, this is what's happening. Then the world goes, oh, but we've been saying it for years. And it is devastating in terms of the impact on American privacy, our individual privacy, because once the router is compromised and it infects the cell phones that are attached, your laptop, your desktop computer, your tablet, then they become compromised. And not only can you watch the data, you can start listening to conversations. You can start watching through the cameras on these devices. If you actually go to Starbucks and get on the free Wi-Fi, you're being very foolish, because not only is the router compromised at Starbucks, but there are people in Starbucks that have devices pretending to be Wi-Fi. And you're connecting to them sometimes. And they're monitoring all of your traffic, reading your emails. Listen, and your text messages. I use the LTE on my phone. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the only way that I can be secure.
I am a specialist in cybersecurity. My phone was hacked through my carrier, AT&T. And what happened, this is brand new to me. They managed to hack into AT&T to move my phone number to another phone. Prior to being hacked, my phone was totally disabled. You couldn't call into it. I could not call out from it. So everything coming in, including my text messages, went to another phone number. So what they had done is they tried to log on to Twitter, said I've lost my password. I used two-factor authentication, meaning I have to give Twitter my phone number. They sent to my phone number a special code so that I could get in, but it wasn't me, it was the hacker. This is something totally out of my control, totally out of everyone's control. Hackers are becoming more and more proficient and more sophisticated in their hacking techniques. If this can happen to me, I promise you, it can happen to anyone. It's not just all the apps we use, it's not just Twitter. A recommendation for the new alternative coins, alternative to Bitcoins, cryptocurrencies. People would invest hundreds of millions of dollars into these coins. What the hacker did was he recommended 6 different coins within 6 minutes and invested, I'm sure, much money beforehand into those coins. As the coins rose, the hacker sold his money. He may have made tens of millions of dollars. If they can do it for me, again, they can do it for anyone. We're living in a new world of hacking and a new world of risks for all of us using the internet. If your carrier is the one who's being hacked, I don't care how foolproof your smartphone is, it's not going to work. So my smartphone would not help in this case. It wouldn't do anything. If your carrier, if someone has intercepted the signal to your phone and they shunt it to some other phone, there's nothing that my phone can do. My phone can help you from applications that get on your phone, but no, it could not have prevented this. I mean, that's nonsense. What happened to me is not a threat, but there's a great threat to all miners. There's a great threat to all people who hold cryptocurrencies. Most people do not keep their currencies on their own wallet. They use wallets on the exchanges. Now, if I were a hacker trying to hack into wallets and get money, I wouldn't search around the world for individuals that had their wallets. No, I would go to an exchange. And the exchanges have billions of dollars in cryptocurrency. So yes, they're all at risk. Everybody says, no, we are secure. That has been proven over and over and over again to be absolute nonsense, beginning with Mt. Gox a couple of years ago, where hundreds of millions of dollars were lost. This will continue to happen until people, the owners of the exchanges, understand that the world they are in is far more sophisticated in terms of hacking than they believe. And I promise you, every exchange will at some point in the near future get hacked. And if you have your wallet on those exchanges, you will lose your money because they do not have the resources to reimburse you.
You got a smartphone, right? You might be listening to this. You got a phone somewhere in the room. The phone is turned off, or at least the screen is turned off. It's sitting there. And if somebody sends you a message, the screen blinks to life. How does that happen? How is it that if someone from any corner of the earth dials a number, your phone rings and nobody else's rings? Every smartphone is constantly connected to the nearest cellular tower. Every phone, even when the screen is off, you think it's doing nothing. You can't see it because radio frequency emissions are invisible. And so your phone is sitting there doing nothing, you think, but it's constantly shouting and saying, I'm here. Who is closest to me? It's a cell phone tower. And every cell phone tower with its big ears is listening, and it compares notes with the other network towers, and your smartphone compares notes with them to go, who do I hear the loudest? And who you hear the loudest is a proxy for closeness, distance. They go, whoever I hear more loudly than anybody else, that's close to me. So you're going to be bound to this cell phone tower, and that cell phone tower is going to make a note, a permanent record, saying this phone handset with this phone number at this time was connected to me. And based on your phone handset and your phone number, they can get your identity. But what this means is that whenever you're carrying a phone, whenever the phone is turned on, there's a record of your presence at that place that is being made and created by companies. Now, these things are stored. Now, these things are saved. It doesn't matter whether you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't matter whether you're the most ordinary person on Earth, because that's how bulk collection, which is the government's euphemism for mass surveillance, works. They simply collect it all in advance in hopes that one day it will become useful. The thing with shutting your phone off that is a risk is, how do you know your phone's actually turned off? When I was in Geneva, working for the CIA, we would all carry like drug dealer phones. The old smartphones, old dumb phones, they're not smartphones. And the reason why was just because they had removable backs where you could take the battery out. And the one beautiful thing about technology is if there's no electricity in it, there's no battery connected to it, it's not sending anything, because you have to get power from somewhere. You have to have power in order to do work. But now your phones are all sealed, right? You can't take the batteries out. So there are potential ways that you can hack a phone where it appears to be off, but it's not actually off. It's just pretending to be off, whereas in fact it's still listening in and doing all this stuff. I wrote a paper on this specific problem. How do you know when a phone is actually off? How do you know when it's actually not spying on you? With a brilliant guy named Andrew Bunny Huang, called the introspection engine. But for average people, right, this is academic. That's not your primary threat. Your primary threats are these bulk collection programs. Your primary threat is the fact that your phone is constantly squawking to these cell phone towers that's doing all of these things, because we leave our phones in a state that is constantly on. You're constantly connected. But the whole idea is we need to identify the problem. And the central problem with smartphone use today is you have no idea what the hell it's doing at any given time. Like, the phone has the screen off. You don't know what it's connected to. You don't know how frequently it's doing it. And you don't even know it's happening because you can't see it, right? And this is the problem with the data collection used today, is there is an industry that is built on keeping this invisible. They can see everything about you. They can see everything about what your device is doing, and they can do whatever they want with your device. It knows what you bought. It knows who you talk to. It knows what you're interested in. It's seen every photograph that you've had. These are intensely private, intensely personal things. And the thing is, our phones have become such a necessary part of our lives for everyone, not just communications. You want to get a job, you want to communicate with your family, again, you want to make a purchase. People increasingly use their phones to do that. So the phone is really an extension of the self. It's a part of you. And now there are private companies that have no business besides creating ways to hack into these phones. And then they sell these hacking methods to governments around the world, including some very bad governments that we wouldn't agree with having these capabilities.
This is the problem that cybersecurity professionals face every day. While you are watching your phone is watching you. The operating system is designed specifically to watch you, listen to you, find out where you are. It needs to know who your friends are. It needs to know what you're saying in your text messages. It needs to listen to you sometimes. It is the world's greatest spy device. But hackers use those same facilities. They are built into the operating system. If a hacker gets access to those facilities, they may choose to empty my bank account without my permission or knowledge, or to steal my identity, or to start charging things on my credit card. That's the problem that we have, and that's just on the individual level. On the corporate level, it's horrific because the problem is magnified by the number of people within the corporation. And on the nation-state level, it's even more horrific. Almost every developed nation has the ability to press a button and destroy the power grid in any other nation. This is the facts. This is not science fiction. What I just told you is real. Nevertheless, people should listen. I built the first antivirus company. Viruses are not the problem. The hackers spend weeks, months, or sometimes years sniffing around in your system, taking what they want before they even plant malware. Every hacker has to go through certain steps in order to break into any system and do damage. The first thing they have to do is get through the firewall, and then they have to find out where they are. So they sniff every device on the network. That's crazy. I've even heard people at Google say that if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Well, I've never heard anything crazier. If everybody knew everything about everyone else, we would have chaos in the streets. It's insane to say if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. We're all humans. Now something that you may not know is that over half of all smartphones, both iOS and Android, are infected with keystroke logging software. Every pornography site in the world, how do you think they make their money? This is the issue. It costs millions of dollars to maintain these massive databases and have the bandwidth to disperse this pornography, and yet you don't pay. Yes, you're paying. The instant you visit the site, if you have an Android, for example, the site runs a JavaScript which sets the download unauthorized application flag. The very first video that you watch, you clicked, you did something. Downloads, first and foremost, a remote rooting function. If it's an iPhone, a remote jailbreaking program. All can be remotely rooted now. After it's rooted, they download a keylogger, and all this takes just a matter of seconds. And from that point on, somebody is watching every single one of your keystrokes. Now, people pay these pornography sites for the ability to put their keylogging software on your phones. Why? Maybe you do online banking, all right? You have a password, you have an application. The very first time you've logged into your bank to check your balance or do anything, they go, thank you very much. And the next day, your bank balance will disappear. Now, why has this not happened to you already? Because hackers are not stupid. In order to take something, they have to download additional software. If they only take 400 or 500 people's bank accounts in one day, then the next day, the white hat hackers are going to say, this is how they did it. Everybody, you can protect yourself. No, they're going to wait until one day this year or next year, and 100 million people in one day are going to have your bank accounts eradicated. Zero balance. Or your identity will be stolen. Or your Bitcoin wallet will be emptied. Or maybe they've been watching your keystrokes to see if, maybe you're saying something to a friend or a lover that maybe could compromise you. Maybe they can blackmail you. So this is why this is being done. And the Russian cyber mafia and the Chinese cyber mafia are so powerful. They pay literally hundreds of millions of dollars to these pornography sites to allow them to access your smartphone so that at some point they can utilize that. It's something to think about. What is the cloud? We haven't thought this through, people. The cloud is a place where I'm going to store data. I don't know what computer it's on or even what country it's in. I don't know who is managing it and monitoring it and controlling it. I don't know what type of security facilities you have. I know nothing. And I'm willing to put my valuable data there? No. Why would we do that? And why do we use the cloud? We use it because it makes life easy. I can access my data from anywhere and from any device, on an airplane, my smartphone, my laptop, who cares? It would have to be a new type of cloud, a cloud that you, as the user, have control over to the extent that you get to choose the location of your data. The ridiculousness of wallets, keep in mind that if you've been to a pornography site, someone's watching you anyway. As soon as you install the wallet, you just gave up your wallet to any hacker who wants access to it. To keep the wallet on any intelligent device, whether it's your laptop, your desktop, or any mobile device, that's insane. It will get stolen. The world is changing rapidly. The entire world is teetering on the edge of a cliff, dangerously, where we are allowing these devices to basically become our masters rather than the other way around. And these devices are spy devices. We buy them so they can spy on us. And that's creating a great deal of danger. It would be a horrific world. It should be waking people up. But instead, we're still drawn into this tiny little colorful, entertaining screen. The most secure it's this one, the one that I carry, and it's a Samsung S7. And the reason is it is the only phone that cannot be remotely rooted or remotely jailbroken.
Before 2013, if you said there's a system that's watching everything you do, the government is collecting records of every phone call in the United States, even for those people who are not suspected of any crime, it was a conspiracy. Yes, there were some people who believed it was happening. Yes, there were academics who could say this was technically possible. The world of 2013, we suspected, some suspected that this was happening. The world after 2013, we know that it's happening. We have now had the first European regulations that are trying to limit the amount of data that can be collected secretly and used against populations broadly. And we have also seen the basic structure of the internet itself change in response to this understanding that the network path that all of our communications cross, when you request a website, when you send a text message, when you read an email, for so long those communications have been electronically naked or unencrypted. Before 2013, more than half the world's internet communications were unencrypted. Now, far more than half are, measured by just web traffic from one of the world's leading browsers, the Google Chrome browser. The entire world has changed in the last few years. It hasn't gone far enough. The problems still exist. And in some ways, they've gotten worse. But we have made progress that would not have been possible if we didn't know what was going on. Hacking has increasingly become what governments consider a legitimate investigative tool. They use the same methods and techniques as criminal hackers. And what this means is they will try to remotely take over your device. Once they do this, by detecting a vulnerability in the software that your device runs, such as Apple's iOS or Microsoft Windows, they can craft a special kind of attack code called an exploit. They then launch this exploit at the vulnerability on your device, which allows them to take total control of that device. Anything you can do on that device, the attacker, in this case the government, can do. They can read your email, they can collect every document, they can look at your contact book, they can turn the location services on, they can see anything that is on that phone instantly and send it back home to the mothership. They can do the same with laptops. The other prong that we forget so frequently is that in many cases they don't need to hack our devices. They can simply ask Google for a copy of our email box, because Google saves a copy of that. Everything that you ever typed into that search box, Google has a copy of. Every private message that you've sent on Facebook, every link that you've clicked, everything that you've liked, they keep a permanent record of. And all of these things are available not just to these companies, but to our governments, as they are increasingly deputized as sort of miniature arms of government.
What about enabling your microphone, camera?
If you can do it, they can do it. It is trivial to remotely turn on your microphone or to activate your camera, so long as you have systems level access. If you had hacked someone's device remotely, anything they can do, you can do. The screen may be off as it's sitting on your desk, but the device is talking all of the time. The question we have to ask is, who is it talking to? Even if your phone is not hacked, right now, you look at it, it's just sitting there on the charger. It is talking tens or hundreds or thousands of times a minute to any number of different companies who have apps installed on your phone. It looks like it's off, it looks like it's just sitting there, but it is constantly chattering. And unfortunately, like pollution, we have not created the tools that are necessary for ordinary people to be able to see this activity. And it is the invisibility of it that makes it so popular and common and attractive for these companies. Because if you do not realize they're collecting this data from you, this very private and personal data, there's no way you're going to object to it. Once your phone is hacked, what is in their hands is not simply your device, it is your future. But we see how these same technologies are being applied to create what they call the social credit system. If any of your activities online, if your purchases, if your associations, if your friends are in any way different from what the government or the powers that be of the moment would like them to be, you're no longer able to purchase train tickets. You're no longer able to board an airplane. You may not be able to get a passport. You may not be eligible for a job. You might not be able to work for the government. All of these things are increasingly being created and programmed and decided by algorithms. And those algorithms are fueled by precisely the innocent data that our devices are creating all of the time, constantly, invisibly, quietly, right now. Our devices are casting all of these records that we do not see being created, that in aggregate seem very innocent. You were at Starbucks at this time. You went to the hospital afterwards. You spent a long time at the hospital. After you left the hospital, you made a phone call. You made a phone call to your mother. You talked to her until the middle of the night. The hospital was an oncology clinic. Even if you can't see the content of these communications, the activity records, what the government calls metadata, which they argue they do not need a warrant to collect, tells the whole story. And these activity records are being created and shared and collected and intercepted constantly by companies and governments. And ultimately it means as they sell these, as they trade these, as they make their businesses on the backs of these records, what they are selling is not information. What they are selling is us. They're selling our future. They're selling our past. They are selling our history, our identity, and ultimately, they are stealing our power. If I get a smartphone and I need to use a phone, I actually open it up before I use it. I perform a kind of surgery on it to physically desolder or sort of melt the metal connections that hold the microphone on the phone. And I physically take this off. I remove the camera for the phone, and then I close it back up, I seal it up. And then if I need to make a phone call, I will attach an external microphone on it. And this is just so if the phone is sitting there and I'm not making a call, it cannot hear me. Now, this is extreme. Most people do not need this. But for me, it's about being able to trust our technology. My phone could still be hacked. My laptop could still be hacked. And just as I told you before, the same principles apply to me. If it is hacked, they can do anything to the device that I can do.